Hey, welcome to Let's Unravel, and I'm your friend Christina. So, random question. Have you been watching the show The Summer I Turned Pretty? If so, what team are you on? Team Conrad? Team Jeremiah? I gotta know. If you can drop a comment below. And of course, I will tell you what team I'm on at the end of this episode. Anyways, I just wanted to say thanks for stopping by, whether you're a new listener to the podcast or you're a friend of the show. I just wanted to say welcome. And since appreciation never goes out of style, we have gotten some new reviews on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. So I just want to say a big thank you to any of you that have been writing reviews and commenting and all those 5-star ratings. Thank you so much. Now, I understand it's probably very annoying anytime you are watching podcasts and you're constantly hearing the podcaster or YouTuber say, like, comment, subscribe. I get it. Before I was a podcaster and I listened to podcasts all the time, whenever I would start to hear them say, like, comment, subscribe, I'm going to out myself. I definitely scrolled past or would fast forward past it. So if you haven't fast forward, thank you. I greatly appreciate that. But I will give you some inside scoop. So the reason why people are always asking for you to like, comment, subscribe, basically it all has to do with the algorithm. And the algorithm is this beast. No, I'm kidding. Algorithm basically is just taking record of what people are liking, commenting, and sharing, subscribing, all those things. So as a show gains more likes, comments, and followers, it's basically giving credibility to the show. And so every time, basically what I'm saying is every time you like something or comment something, you can actually be sending this show to a new listener and they could be discovering their new favorite show. Not to put all that pressure onto you because, you know, that's a big job that you hold right there. And if you don't know, I'm very sarcastic, so apologies in advance. Anyways, but like always, I just wanted to say a big thank you for any of you who have been doing those things. And now this is where I get into the part of the spiel where I say, if you find a piece of the show that really resonates with you, please drop a comment, a like, a follow, any of those things on any platform that you listen to. Now, without any further ado, I'm going to jump right into our win of the week. So if you are watching on YouTube, you are going to notice I actually have a backdrop this week, which that is our win of the week. Now, if you're listening on Apple and Spotify, unfortunately, I'm not going to describe it to you because I think that would be painful for you. Now, if you want to see the backdrop, by all means, you can head over to YouTube at Let's Unravel Pod. And this is episode 7. And you can see the backdrop in the back, which I highly encourage you to do. And while you're on YouTube, why not give it a like? So our win of the week is we have a backdrop. I've had some individuals reach out really asking when the backdrop was going to become a something instead of a blank wall. And so for any of you that have been very concerned about the backdrop, I just want to say this win of the week is dedicated to you. Love you. Anyways, jumping into our topic of the week, what are we going to unravel this week? So let's unravel concealed confidence. So confidence is one of those words, and the best way to describe it is you know what confidence is. And a lot of times people will be like, I know it when I see it. And what's also really interesting is if you're any kind of person that happens to have kids in their life, whether you're an aunt, an uncle, a mom, a dad, or maybe you babysit kids, there's just certain words kids will come running up to you and you'll randomly use it in a sentence. So if I randomly said something like, that person is so confident, and then a kid will be like, what is that word? What does that mean? And there's just some words that you're like, it's such a fundamental word. It's almost like you don't even know how to describe it. I just always think of confidence as one of those words where it's like, oh no, this is such a universal word. Everyone knows what confidence is. But then a kid asks you and you're like, now I have to try to describe to you what confidence is. And a lot of times what we always say is like superheroes. So like Superman. Yeah, I think when I think of confidence, I definitely think of Superman. Anyways, that's the really unique thing about confidence is a lot of times confidence is it's very visual. You can see it. One of my favorite things is whenever you're on like TikTok especially or social media as a whole is there's always these like little shows people do where it's like a guy will run up to a girl on a street and they'll be like, what is the most attractive trait a guy could have? And I feel like 9 out of 10 times girls will usually say confidence. And it's like, why? Because confidence is a very noticeable trait people either have or don't have. But when someone's confident, it also provides a lot of security for someone else. So for this week, when I was thinking about confidence, I was like, well, I don't need, usually I'll give a definition for words in these episodes. And I was like, well, I don't really need to define confidence because everybody knows what confidence is. And then my curiosity got the best of me because, you know, if you've learned anything about me, like I said last week, my favorite book is a dictionary, or at least that was true at 8 years old. Anyways, the point is my curiosity got the best of me. So I decided to look up what confidence actually means. I don't know what I was expecting the definition to be, but it gave me something to think about. So the definition for confidence is the feeling or belief that one can rely on someone or something a firm trust. I think that's really interesting because confidence, you think about Superman, you think about whoever the people are in your life that you're just like, oh, that guy or girl, super confident. It's just interesting how it goes back to a firm trust, like Superman. If you were in Metropolis and you were hanging off a roof, I feel like in the back of your mind, you'd randomly be thinking like, ooh, Superman could show up. And it's like, well, why? Because you have a firm trust that that person would be there. And now moving into the other word for this title. So concealed confidence. With conceal, the definition for conceal is just to keep from sight. It's to hide. Something that has been interesting to see is when you stop to observe people and you start to see confidence. And after having worked in corporate, I've gotten to see a lot of different variations of confidence. And one of my favorite variations of confidence is quiet confidence. There's just something so unique about quiet confidence because it's not flashy. It's not loud and obnoxious. There's some types of confidence where I don't even know if the person's confident. They're just loud. With quiet confidence, what's so cool is you just see people that are unfazed where they're doing something that they genuinely like to do, and it might go against the status quo or it might not be the coolest thing, but they keep doing it. With this week's episode, entitling it Concealed Confidence, it was really going after this. How do you obtain confidence? Because there's nothing worse than being in your 20s and feeling very insecure. And I think that is a very normal feeling most 20-year-olds have because you're experiencing so much of life for the first time. And as someone that would like to say they are a recovering insecure person, I want to give you all the things I wish I had years ago about building confidence and just what that looks like, because after all, say I am a recovering insecure person. Before I had ever gotten to this point in my life where I was confident in a career or confident in putting myself out there and doing kind of crazy things like starting a podcast, I was an extremely insecure person. I mean, I was so insecure that I used to wish people couldn't see me because I thought it would be easier. And after saying that, I'm sure some people could hear that and be thinking like, ooh, like kind of like it hurts. It's cringy, or maybe it's like, oh, I'm so sorry. And I appreciate the sentiment behind it, but I just want to let you know I'm not there anymore. I can talk about this with a deep understanding that if you are insecure and to the point that when you're in public settings and it's like there's like this nervousness or this anxiety or whatever the case may be, which I do have a story about this later in the episode. So if you don't mind holding on to your seats, we will get to that story shortly. One of the things that I've learned throughout my 20s is building confidence with myself. And not to sound like corny or cheesy, but I do have 3 simple keys on how I built confidence. And I feel like that sounds like such a gimmick, but when I was looking at confidence really as a whole, and I was reflecting back on some of my most insecure moments in life, I mean, I was so insecure, especially when I was in high school. I'm talking like freshman year of high school. I would walk down these hallways. I desperately wish people wouldn't look at me, wouldn't talk to me, whatever it was. And it wasn't because I didn't want to talk to people. It was such an insecurity behind it. And there was times where I thought I was confident, but really what I was doing is I was really masking these insecurities and I was hiding behind like makeup. And another one that I'd hide behind is I actually wear contact lenses. So since I was 10, I've always needed to wear glasses. By the time I was in like 10th grade, I was a little bit of a late bloomer with wearing makeup. But by the time I was in 10th grade, I wore makeup every single day and I wore contacts every single day. And I remember when I would get into certain science classes where it was like chemistry and you had to wear goggles and you were using, I don't know, whatever the things are that you use in science class. And the teacher would say, anybody that has to wear contacts, you have to take them out, you have to wear glasses. And for me, I hated those days because I felt so insecure, and it was almost like I felt like everyone was looking at me. I felt like I stuck out like a sore thumb, but the reason why was because I was hiding behind makeup and contacts thinking those things would make me confident when really those were the masks that I was putting on to give this false illusion that I was confident when really I was not at all. If anything, they just helped me blend in with people. That's the thing with confidence and insecurity is you can use things to kind of act like a band-aid over insecurity. So I used makeup, I used contacts to hide these insecurities. And it wasn't until I really was out of high school and in my early 20s. I mean, I didn't leave the house not wearing makeup and contacts. It would be like I would purposely not take my makeup off until like 10 or 10:30 at night, because if my friends called me up and were like, hey, you want to go to like a last minute movie or randomly go to this diner, I had to always be wearing makeup because like I said, I was so insecure that if I wasn't wearing makeup and I wasn't wearing contacts, it was just that insecurity would eat me alive. It wasn't until I had gotten really into like my mid 20s, I would purposely make myself have to go a day or so without wearing any makeup. And that was something where I didn't even realize how much it had become a crutch in my life, because it was a routine. It was this habit that I had built and built and built upon, that I was like, well, if I want to feel confident, I have to do this thing. And what's also so unique is back in episode, I believe it was episode 2, Humble Beginnings, I had given you guys a hot take. And I will say it again. My hot take is I hate that phrase, fake it till you make it, because it's never done anything good for me in my life, mostly because it always made me feel like I was this imposter. I would always start these things saying, don't worry, fake it till you make it. And then all of a sudden you'd be doing whatever this task was, not knowing what you were doing. Then somewhere along the way, you got good at it, but that imposter feeling like never went away. You were always like, okay, but like I kind of just faked it, and like I kind of know what I'm doing, and it just was like this endless cycle. I decided I was throwing away that phrase. I was going to rewrite it, and I rewrote it to believe it to be it, because I started to say things like believe it to be it. So even with this podcast, when I was like, well, I'm a podcaster now. So even if this podcast show sucks, I am a podcaster now, because you have to believe it, because what you believe is ultimately what you will be. So now I'm going to give you the secret sauce to how I've gotten to really be comfortable in my own skin. It's these 3 simple things, and I'll dive deep into them. But these 3 simple things is, number 1, it's collecting wins. So just like how within every podcast we do a win of the week, I had learned in my early 20s, if I wanted to reshape any habits I had, which we'll go into a deeper episode on habits and how to create good habits and how to break bad habits, in order for me to really start to build having confidence, I had to start collecting these wins. And that's why I had made it such a vital part of this show. Collecting wins ultimately is something that really helped lay the foundation of my confidence, and it ended up being something I was able to build on moving forward. So with wins, it would be something as small as like making my bed. And the reason why, and this leads us into our key number 2, is it was building a relationship with myself. We build relationships with friends, we build relationships with family members, but I don't feel like we ever talk about building a relationship with yourself. By collecting small wins and by saying that you're going to do something and you follow through with that something, you're building a relationship with yourself. And the third key, which also ties into that second key, is listening and actually doing whatever it is. Like as you get to know yourself, it's actually doing whatever it is that you say you're going to do. So it's the same thing like when you have a relationship with a friend. You build that relationship with a friend the same way you'd build a relationship with yourself. It's listening to yourself, and it's like, does this make me feel uncomfortable? Does hanging out with these people make me feel uncomfortable? And what's so interesting is our body knows. Our body knows when we are excited to be with certain friends versus being with friends that drain us. And I remember actually hearing that quote somewhere online where it's like, the friendships that you walk away and you're like, wow, I feel like I could take on the world. Like I'm ready to do some like life-changing things. And then you hang out with some other friends and you're like, I feel so drained. I just need to hibernate. And that's where, once again, you start to listen to yourself and you actually start to put into practice the things that your body or yourself is telling you. You'll be amazed at how exponentially your confidence can grow. Now, something to make you aware of, there is an arch nemesis to confidence, because like any great story, like any great movie, there is always a conflict. And that conflict usually is, some type of good, some type of bad. So the arch nemesis is really doubt. And the reason why it's doubt is because if you think about it, confidence is about having this firm trust. It's about believing the things that you're going to do. And doubt is the polar opposite. It's the arch nemesis. When I started working in a startup and I'd been there for about a year or two, and a lot of times I would have different people, whether they were managers or leaders, be on these meetings. And I remember one guy in particular had asked me, we were constantly building and growing, in very big ways. And so I just remember someone asking me about adding a new product line, and they're like, well, are you ready for like if they decide like out of nowhere they're going to add this new product line? And I had coined this phrase. I said, I'm ready for nothing but prepared for everything. The reason why I could say that with such confidence was because I had realized you have no control, honestly, over anything. Life is just a endless roller coaster of any endless possibilities happening. To root your confidence on being predictable is kind of boring. The root of all of this episode, if I was gonna sum this episode into a phrase, and that is one of my favorite things to do, is I would say it's building trust with yourself. When someone would come to me and they would say, oh yeah, they're gonna add a new product line, I could just easily say, I'm ready for nothing, but prepared for everything. And it was just my way of knowing. I would have to just say to myself, like, Christina, what is the worst thing that could happen? And I've had a lot of crappy things happen. Like when I was working in a startup, like I used to have to call states to set up certain licenses for products that we were releasing. I remember one time I set up something wrong within a state and it took weeks. I mean, weeks to get this resolved. I would talk to one person after the next person and I would almost like borderline beg and plead, like, please, I have no clue what's going on. Can you please help me? Finally, after weeks, I finally found one woman. She actually helped me and got the issue resolved. But moving forward, that was really my ground level where I would say, well, what's the worst thing that could happen? I messed up something with the state. I had to call the state multiple weeks. Once you start to have like this foundation or really this baseline of experiences, you start to realize, okay, maybe like this isn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. But doubt will come in and basically tell you that your tiny little problem is Mount Everest. And I promise you, as you build a relationship with yourself, you'll start to see those Mount Everest as the tiny rocks that they actually are. I go through debunking some things about confidence. I rooted my confidence in thinking it was about makeup. I thought it was about contacts. I thought if I had money, I thought if I had titles, all of these different things. And I think that's something really the world tells us is once you start to have money, you'll feel more confident. And once you start to have that title, you'll feel more confident too. And to some degree, maybe it's true. You know, it's like, okay, you have the designer name clothes or purse, or maybe it's the title like, oh, you finally hit manager. Before you ever step into having the more money and before you ever step into having the title, you have built that confidence level prior to getting to those places. If someone plucked you out of a fast food restaurant and made you CEO, you would feel like the biggest imposter. And that is the thing about how money and titles don't change what's going on the inside. That's where you have to build a relationship with yourself. Ultimately, the way that you create a relationship with yourself or establish this foundation is you have to start creating a space where you value your own voice. You have to start to establish a relationship with yourself. A lot of ways that I had done this is I've done things like journaling and taking long rides. It's having moments where you're really alone with yourself. Because I think it's easy that as you have confident friends, you take on their mannerisms and their things. But at some point in time, even your best friend, they could have hobbies or interests that you don't like. And so that's where it's collecting the small ones. It's going after the things that you enjoy, the things that light you up inside. And creating this can actually be such a fun journey because you get to see a side of yourself and unlock this part of you that you never knew existed. To debunk a few things is like dominance doesn't mean that you have confidence. Dominance is ultimately a way of trying to control a room, trying to control an individual. If you see someone come into a room and they seem very like dominant, or if it's a loud confidence, volumes don't determine confidence levels. So just because someone comes into a room and they're very loud and maybe they're the focal point or maybe they have a lot of drama attached to them doesn't necessarily mean that they are the picture of confidence. They may not be the Superman of confidence. And so that is something that when you start to watch and you look, and like I said at the top of the episode, quiet confidence to me is one of the coolest things to witness. If you're around people that have a lot of money, you have loud money and you have quiet money. And so loud money is exciting because it's like the most expensive of everything. Whereas quiet money it's very subtle. It doesn't feel the need to impress, but it has certain values and standards. And seeing both of those things in play is really interesting and exciting. And it goes back to the same thing with a quiet confidence. There's, especially like if you think of the movie movie, like The Parent Trap with Lindsay Lohan, and the mom, she was British, and I wish I remembered her name. So the mom from Parent Trap, she just had this quiet confidence to her where, especially like throughout this whole movie, she's this fashion designer and she knew what it took to be in certain rooms, and she had what she needed to be in those rooms. She had that, whether it was believe it to be it, because maybe she also too threw out fake it to make it. In the movie, there gets to be this scene where she's about to run into her ex and she is just totally freaking out. She's going through all the doubts, all the ifs, and that is one of those really grounding moments where you're like, okay, so she's just like all of us. So even the people with quiet confidence, no one is immune to doubt. No one is immune to having insecure moments. It's life. We all have them. But I will say there is nothing better than a 3-year-old with confidence, because they're the ones that end up wearing a Superman costume to school, or I would say at the ripe age of 3, that is a peak level of confidence I wish I could obtain again. But if we're honest, that could be a moment where we strive to be. We strive to be those 3-year-olds with having all that confidence that you just wear what you want to wear, and we're not in doubt and we're not insecure, and and it's so much easier to say all of these things, and I get that. But what's really helped me in this whole journey, and I call it the snowball effect, and it goes back to collecting wins. That's ultimately where this all comes from, is this snowball effect. And if you think about like a snowball and it's rolling down a hill and it just gradually picks up pace over time and it becomes this monster snowball, and it's just collecting those wins. It's collecting those things where they can build upon each other until you have this massive thing that really can't be denied or refuted. For me, a lot of the things like I would do, and it sounds kind of silly because I've talked about how makeup and contacts, those were like insecurities. But think about when you're going for a new job. What is like one of the first things that you think about? Like, how do I dress? I want to dress to impress. And it's funny because also growing up, a lot of times like I would hear that saying like, dress for the job you want, not the job you have. And it sounds silly, but dressing a particular way really does help with your confidence. It's the same thing like about the Superman poses, which I remember when that came out on the internet, and there was a massive frenzy about this case study that came out that said people were standing in the like Wonder Woman and Superman pose where you have like both of your hands like or fists or whatever, and you put them on your hips, and they would stand like that for like 30 seconds to like a minute or two, and they said, oh, it increased your confidence. And then because that became like a big frenzy, obviously people had to go and debunk it. Who knew a shirt could bring you so much confidence? Who knew it could be having a second to stop and do like a Superman pose? There's just some things that sometimes it doesn't make sense that you can do, but if it actually boosts your confidence, that's all that matters. So if throwing out fake it to make it and changing it to believe it to be it is the thing that can boost your confidence, do it. Do what works for you. Build trust with yourself. That is the beauty about having a relationship with you, or with yourself. And so again, building on small habits, things that I did to help build trust with myself. It sounds so stupid, but like I would make my bed every single day. And I was not raised in one of those households where my mom was always like, make sure your room's clean, make sure your bed is made. That was something that like I taught myself to do, where I was like, I'm going to make my bed every day because that is just a small habit of something I can obtain and do myself. And honestly, over time, it became mindless. I don't even think about making my bed anymore. I do it every single day, but it was something that I told myself I was going to do it, and I did it. It's same thing with people that work out every day. If you see anybody that's in excellent shape, it's always one of those things where you find out like they get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, they do these routines, and yes, working out can make you confident, but it's also that you said you were going to do something and you followed through on those things, and that assists with building confidence too. And lastly, another great thing is when you start to find natural abilities or traits or things that you're just naturally good at. Like, it's so cool. If you have kids in your life, you can see at like the earliest ages if a kid is going to be good at something. It could be sports, it can be mechanical things, it can be honestly anything. It's amazing. Find those natural things that you're good at. If you're athletic, find a sport that you enjoy. When you find things that you like, they make you come alive and you're good at. It definitely assists with boosting your confidence. I've talked in previous episodes about how I was watching the series Smallville. There is a new Superman movie out. I'm sure I should go see that at some point. But once again, Superman's such a great example because you look at Clark Kent and you look at him in comparison to Superman, and it seems as though they're so different because Clark Kent is like goofy and he can't seem to get out of his own way. And then you have Superman, and Superman is the poster boy for like confidence. Even with Clark Kent, even though he dresses one one way as Clark Kent and dresses another way as Superman. And, Clark Kent is still Superman. Even when he's dressed like Clark Kent, even behind glasses, he knows what he's capable of, though he allows himself to play a part so that other people can't pick up on who he really is. That's like quiet confidence. They know what they're capable of. They know they don't have to be the loudest person in the room. They don't necessarily need to be the focal point of attention, but when a job needs to get done, it's a job for Superman. Even looking at Parent Trap, and that movie is so great too, where you think about this woman and she's a fashion designer and you think, man, she's so cool. Like, oh, she has this effortless confidence. And then sure enough, it's like her ex-husband throws her for a loop because it brings out that insecurity in her. And there's people that will look at you and they'll think you're confident or assume that you're confident. And maybe you have this moment where you're like, no, I'm not confident, which is funny because that actually brings me into one of my personal stories. Is I remember, and this was in like the last like year or two, maybe 3 max, when I was talking to a friend and there was this event that we had gone to. I don't really remember the circumstances perfectly, but there was like an event that we had gone to. I remember talking to her on the phone afterwards and I was just like, how did I seem at that event? And she's like, why? And I go, well, I was so nervous. Like, and it's so funny because, sometimes people will say, so if there was an animal that you could relate to, what would you be? And everybody always has these really cool animals. I remember saying to my friend at one point in time, saying like, no, I feel like a shaking chihuahua. Like, I'm nervous, I'm anxious, like I don't know what to make of myself. Like, I'm like, I just am honestly always telling myself like, believe it to be it. When I was saying like, we're in this environment, I was a little like nervous, like trying to just be like, it's okay, just be present. And she's like, oh my God, you were nervous? You were insecure? She goes, you walk into the room. She goes, I didn't think anything of it. And I don't say that story to puff myself up or anything like that. I say it to go to show a point that there's so many people that appear to be confident and you don't really know inside they feel like a shaking chihuahua. That was something that anytime I've ever stepped out to do anything, and I've done a lot of really weird, crazy things like starting a podcast. But the point is, stepping out and doing really weird, crazy things. I mean, you feel insecure. It's a natural part of life, but it's what you do with those things. I've built enough trust with myself that I'm like, I'm going to look a little crazy. That's okay. It's part of the journey. Like Clark Kent, if he never put his Superman suit on, I mean, you would never know there was a story of Superman. And that's a lot of times what you have to do is you have to put the suit on. You have to do the weird or crazy thing. And next thing you know, you look at Clark Kent and he's become Superman and he is the picture of hope for Metropolis. In the beginning of this episode, I told you about how I was so insecure. I told you about my spirit animal being a shaking chihuahua, and even talking about throwing out the fake it to make it because of being an imposter, about how I'll be in rooms and I'll be like, why am I even here? And then people look at me as if it's like I'm so confident, and I'm like, I am just trying to survive. When I was 15 and I was in high school, that was when my insecurities were at the highest they had ever been. And honestly, I just really longed to find someone that was authentically themselves, that like you could look up to. At 15, I had discovered Taylor Swift. For reference, that was about 13 years ago. 13 years ago, I just need to give you this caveat. It was not cool to be a Taylor Swift fan. I know everyone loves Taylor Swift now. I think it's great people can finally acknowledge and see all of like her wonderful songwriting capabilities as they are. Like, yeah, she's great. But 13 years ago, I got made fun of for being a Taylor Swift fan. One of the things that made me want to be a Taylor Swift fan is I remember I used to see these interviews where she would sit and she would talk and it wasn't polished. Whenever you watched her interviews, at whatever age she was authentically that age. Yes, she might have held herself with confidence. Yes, she might have had PR training. But the thing that actually made me want to look up to her at 15 was this ability that she was unequivocally herself. There would be interviews where she would say, I'm not a good dancer. I'm really bad at it. Or how she would say, I love to bake. She loved cats. She went through all of these these things that she loved. And this whole world of like marketing, they always say that you want to make yourself as distinguishable as possible, meaning people will either love you or they'll hate you, and there's no in between. And in a way, that's really what she's done. People either love her or people either hate her. But when I was 15 and I would see in interviews how she just started writing songs on her bedroom floor, and next thing you know, she's winning awards and doing these things, and it seemed like she had very humble beginnings. It was easy to feel seen by someone like that. It was easy to see where even when she would write songs like You Belong With Me, and it was about the girl in band who wasn't the cheerleader, who was the girl next door, the most magnetizing thing about Taylor Swift was her ability to be herself. She had really built like this confidence within herself of she was okay if it looked different. And that was something that at 15 I wanted. I wanted to be confident in who I was. So when all of a sudden I started to listen to her music, and it's like I found a part of me that enjoyed her songwriting, and it was like she brought you into this world where, you know, a lot of times you didn't fit into whatever society was at the moment, but within Taylor Swift's songwriting, within her world, you felt like you fit. And that was something that was really special that people weren't doing. And, you know, I think it's really cool how people are doing that more now, and how there's this really journal-like songwriting type of entries that are going on. But she paved the way for that. She gave this place for people that felt like outcasts. She made people feel seen. She made people feel known. And that was something that was really unique. And that went back to really her confidence level. That was something that by the time I was 15 and I was like, you know what, it's not cool to be a Taylor Swift fan, but I don't care. That was something where I was like, you know, like Justin Bieber says, I was standing on business. I was standing on the fact I knew she was a great songwriter. I was here for it. And then as 1989 came rolling out, as all of her other albums came to follow and people slowly started to get on the bandwagon, that was something where it was easy to see that it was like, oh yeah, there's real talent here. And now I'll get off my humble bragging of how much I loved Taylor Swift before it was cool. All of that to say, I say that I was insecure so that you can see no matter what things look like, no one has it all together. Everyone is just as messy as the other person. We all have different hangups, but it goes back to how are you going to build that relationship with yourself. I want to leave you with one last golden piece of advice. Don't value people's opinion over your own. I'm not saying don't listen to people. That's not what I'm saying. We'll have a whole episode about how mentors are great and they can shape your life. But what I want you to remember is it makes me think of that scene in Grey's Anatomy where Christina Yang says to Meredith about Derek and how she goes, don't forget you're the sun. That she doesn't orbit around Derek Shepherd, the McDreamy. She is the sun. She has a value. She has potential. She has all these things going for her. And that's what I mean by saying don't value other people's opinions over your own. Your opinions matter. Once you can hold on to your own opinions, you can reshape the way you see things. You can build confidence. You can build that relationship with yourself. So once you stop valuing other people's opinions over your own opinions, you'll be amazed at how that can reshape your entire confidence. And what's also really unique in that experience is it actually gets easier to listen to other people's opinions because you've built trust with yourself. You can find more wisdom in the things that they're saying because you're not holding on to their opinions for dear life, because once again, you've built that relationship with yourself. So we unraveled concealed confidence, which actually makes me think of this quote from William Jennings Bryan. He said, "The way to develop self-confidence is to do the thing you fear and get a record of successful experience behind you." So makes me think of collecting wins. And so now, typically I would move into key takeaways. And what I've decided is I don't really like key takeaways. So I think it's time we rebrand. And you know, if there's one thing that I love to do, I seem to love to have hot takes, throw away the fake it till you make it and all these things. So I'm throwing away key takeaways. These are not your mom's key takeaways anymore. We are rebranding to sticky thoughts because honestly, I love sticky notes and I don't have any here with me right now. I love sticky notes. I write things on sticky notes all the time. Do I actually remember them because they're on sticky notes? Absolutely not. But sticky thoughts in my mind, it's the thoughts that stick. Our sticky thoughts on concealed confidence are: 1, it is an obtainable trait. It can become your most magnetic trait. 2, doubt can impact your confidence level because it is the arch nemesis of confidence. But no worries, because addressing those things head on can reprise what was impacted. 3, now being quiet doesn't disqualify you. It's called concealing your confidence. Loud doesn't mean you have more or less. It just shows where you are in the room. And number 4, snowball effect. Small habits assist with building trust with yourself to obtain the confidence you want. The best way to describe this episode is just about building trust with yourself. So thank you so much for hanging out with me today, and I'd love to connect with you more. You can connect with us on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at Let's Unravel Pod. If you wanted to see our new background, you can check that out on YouTube. If you enjoyed this week's episode or the podcast show in general, please leave a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Your comments and 5-star ratings go a long way, helps with the algorithm. Also, please don't forget to hit follow or subscribe wherever you may listen. This helps you stay up to date on any new episodes. We have new episodes every single Thursday. And by the way, I am Team Conrad, in case anybody was wondering. Well, that is all for today. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. I'll see you again next Thursday. Bye.